Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name's Kevin Khan. I'm an executive leadership coach. But before that, I was in business. I ran multinational organizations, billion-dollar sales targets, and I also had the ability to go through and multitask in multiple areas within organizations. I've done almost every function other than HR and procurement. So now I'm living my post-corporate life doing some HR work now as a professional coach. So can I tell you on a little secret? Anyone want to know a little secret? Do you want to know a little secret? We're all aging. Whether we like it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not, we're all aging, which is why the multi-generational workplace is now become a real important feature in any leadership decision and any organizational culture. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. You can see me featured on LinkedIn and everything, but I also talk about customer experience. I also talk about employee experience. And why is that all connected? Because they span all generations. Our customers are young and mature. Our employees are experienced and new to the workplace. So what do we mean about the multi-generational workforce? Today, we live in a new dimension. We're lucky enough to have 5 different generations within the workplace. So we're seeing the end of the traditionals and the senior citizens. But we're seeing Gen Zs, and soon to come, the Gen Alphas. Because in 3 to 4 years' time, the Gen Alphas will come into the workplace. And what is known about the generations? It's the next slide that you want to take photos of. It's this. It is all of the values and the stereotypes. That's what researchers have found. There are stereotypes for all the different generations. We may have people who are more mature or more experienced, and they may be known as people that don't like to learn or don't like change. Whereas we have the Gen Alphas who are digital natives, and they're eager for change. They want to learn as many things as possible, as quickly as possible, so that they can do their side hustle. So there are many things that define the generations. But remember, they're stereotypes. They're not the people that actually work for us and serve our customers. So what else is the research telling us? I'm going to appeal to all the left-brainers here because the next 4 slides all have data for you. So for the left-brainers, you'll love the bar charts. What that is basically saying is that by 2050, we are going to be a much more older generation society than we ever were. The world is rapidly aging. Whether we like it or not, it's a fact of life. Many countries around the world are not reproducing enough. Even China, who put in all of the population regulations all those years ago, they are now suffering because of the one-child policy. Japan, you are now working until you are 75. Singapore, by 2030, you will be working until 70. It's a fact of life that we all have to come to grips with. In Australia, ageism is categorized as discrimination. And there are a lot of discrimination cases that are going on today. In India, your population is aging rapidly as well. But what is more noticeable for India is there are more women than men in the older category. In Japan, as we said, they're going to be working way over the 70 age limit. Right now, people in the later stages of life are still working very long hours. And that's just part of Japanese culture, long hours of working. In Singapore, as we said, by 2030, you'll be working until 70, simply because the country cannot reproduce enough. So what are the trends? We're seeing that all people, the baby boomers, the 59s to the 77s, and older and above now, they are getting more and more stable because they don't want to leave work. They need to make sure that they have sufficient to retire on. We've all heard rising costs of living and inflation, right? Especially post-pandemic. We need to make sure that we have the nest egg. That's why people are working longer. And yet we have the Gen Zs, the digital natives, and soon to be the Gen Alphas. They're asking for pay rises after 18 months. They're asking for promotions after 12 months. It's a very different way of managing and a very different way of thinking. So what are the experts telling us? Knowledge is important. We need to maintain knowledge, especially with all the rotation that is happening in the workplace. People resign for 500 or better sounding title. Institutional knowledge is leaving corporations. How do we maintain that? We also need to have a look at matching profiles to our customers or the customers that we serve. How do we make sure that we have the right talent and we keep those talents so that they can continue to serve the clients, which drives the revenue? Remember the 80-20 rule. 80% of your revenues come from 20% of your customers. Experts are also saying that we are seeing labor shortages in certain areas. Some countries are giving you fast track to citizenship or permanent residency because of lack of talent in specific areas. Healthcare, in particular, is a huge call out. Nurses, doctors, insufficient around the world, especially post-pandemic. Everyone's fighting for the same resources. People have to work longer. We now have 90-year-old doctors still practicing because there are not enough doctors around. What are the tips for managers? So I've broken up the tips for you in 3 areas. One for the manager themselves in terms of mindset, one for organizations, and the other one, the last one, for coaching. Whether you are a professional coach or whether you are a people manager, coaching skills are required. So what do we do as a manager? As a manager, your mindset needs to be inclusive. That's the number one mindset change that is needed. How can we include a more diverse workforce? If the world is rapidly aging, shouldn't we have an employee workforce that represents the global generations? How do we develop products? Don't we need to develop the products? Don't we need to test the products? Successful organizations test products within their employee sets because the employee set should be representative of the markets and segments that they serve. We also need to have a lifelong learning, the 3 Ls. How do we embrace the lifelong learning? I know a lot of managers face a conundrum, especially when CEOs and stockholders tell them, do more with less. We need more profits. We need more dividends. How do we embrace the 3 Ls for our employees? How do we give them the time to actually learn? It could be on the job, it could be classroom, it could be external. Organizational change. The number one thing that is needed, healthcare benefits. Not all countries have healthcare benefits for our employees. How do we make this a really good workplace experience? Because fundamentally, you don't have employee experience if you don't have workplace experience. The hygiene factors are critical to enable more mature and experienced workers and also to attract the Gen Z generation as well. So healthcare benefits are paramount. It's required as a part of an employment culture or an organizational culture. We also want to make sure that we have diversity for the slate of open roles. So we've been fighting for decades for women to be included on the slate. Now we also need to have age diversity as well. It's not just making sure it is the best person or the right fit. We need to make sure that we consider everybody. Just because the person that has grey hairs, and mine's rapidly greying, doesn't mean that I should be excluded. The stereotype, oh, a person that's 58 or 60, they'll want to take a nap in the afternoon. That's stereotyping. So simple beliefs that we have, those are stereotypes. That's what we mean by mindset change and organizational cultural change. For coaching, so whether you're a manager or whether you're a professional coach, things to look out for: create opportunities for dialogue. How do we get organizations, how do we get people managers to think more broadly about what inclusion is? How do we redesign the job roles? How do we embrace AI to more value-add roles? Rather than everybody panicking to say jobs are gone, how do we embrace the AI so that everybody moves up the value chain? Coaching conversations can also talk about respecting experience. Experience sometimes is critical, especially in the healthcare space, where people deal with uncertainty in terms of blood transfusions, problems with people's heart, brain hemorrhaging. A lot of experience cannot be taught through on-demand learning or through self-taught courses. We need to embrace that experience. We need to be able to tap all that institutional organizational knowledge. So, in closing, I know we're pushed for time, so I'm going to try and make some up for you. Here are some takeaways for you. We want to make sure that organizational cultures embrace D&I, but not in a limited sense. It's not just about making sure that we have women on the slate. It's about making sure we have all people on the slate, regardless of gender, regardless of age, regardless of race, or regardless of our preferences. We need to make sure that leaders, because at the end of the day, organizations are made up of leaders, that they have a mindset change of inclusiveness and the value of experience, and what it means from a profitability perspective when institutional knowledge leaves the organization. We heard in earlier presentations that when an employee leaves, 1.5 times the employee's salary is needed. What happens when the institutional knowledge is gone? Who's going to train all of these new people coming into your organization? Redesign the job architecture, embrace AI, move up the food chain, labor-intensive work. Can roles be split? Can we share jobs? Can we have people that work 3 days a week and 2 days a week and rotate it every fortnight, every 2 weeks? That's one way of redesigning jobs. Older workers may need more flexibility. And that also helps your bottom line as well. Rather than paying them a full-time wage, you can pay them a part-time wage, 3 days a week. One of the biggest things that leaders have always said is, older workers are too expensive. HR always says they're at the top of the salary range already. There are ways around it. Flexibility, thinking more laterally about job sharing. And lastly, remember, at the end of the day, ageism is discrimination. And we want to eliminate discrimination in the workplace and in our societies that we live in. So with that, I invite questions. And I'd invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you'd like to have a copy of the slides, just message me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to PDF and share that with you. Thank you.
Hi, Kevin. Really informative presentation. I'm Puneet Mehrotra. I do a lot of work with leaders with respect to Gen Z. And one of the research that I've kind of found with Aon is that amongst the top 3 or 4 things that have been listed in that research is Gen Z needs a purpose of life. And they really are very purpose-driven. They want to make an impact. These are 2 additional things that came up very strongly in that research. Any thoughts about what can we do about this, or do you have anything to share in that area?
So I work with a whole stack of Gen Zs. I'm on INSEAD's coaching panel. So I have about 40 MBA students. And I would say half of them have said this to me in the last 2 months. I want a job where I feel that my values match the organization's values, and I want to make an impact. If I had $1 for every time I've heard that in the last 4 years, I'd probably be quite rich right now. So yes, impact and matching values is really important. Now, from an employer's perspective, you might just think, oh my God, this is one of those kids that are just on grass, right? But when you think about it as coaches, when we are living our passion, when we are connecting or feel a sense of belonging to the organization, that brings a more value into the organization. A person's more likely to go the extra mile for your customer. The person is more likely to learn more so that they can progress more, so that they can have more impact. So yes, I would agree with you. Passion, the sense of belonging, and wanting to make an impact is a very big deal for the Gen Zs.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. When you are speaking about the speed of the present generation, recently I was interviewing one candidate. At the end of the interview, I wanted to select him. As usual, we asked the last question, why do you want to change your job? The simple question, he said, sir, I've been working for 11 months in this company. I was literally shocked. 11 months, what is 11 months? So that's a speed. So let's put a big round of applause to Kevin for a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Kevin, for enlightening us with your wisdom and knowledge.